Sorry girl, I did not like what you had to say. No diet should ever let you go hungry, so stuff your hunger games. Over 40, over 50, over 60, come on guys. Do you seriously think any of these fancy diets is gonna cover it? What do you think happens to our bodies when we get older? Lowered kidney function, lowered metabolic rate, less testosterone, less growth hormone. And this is just to name a few things. Now, what does this all mean in terms of your diet? Let me guide you. It's all about finding the right macro that is healthy for the older body and will produce fat loss results and muscle building results. So what is such a macro? Older than 50? Well, then such a macro should be 35, 35, 30. That means 35% of your daily calories should come from your protein, 35% from your carbs, and 30% from your fats. But before we continue, guys, macros are not the holy grail. 5% up or 5% down is not going to break your efforts. Just try and stick to the macro as best as you can. And don't stress too much about the slight deviation here and there. Why 35% protein? Minimum 30, maximum 40. Remember that 5% deviation? Below 30 guys and the body will struggle to build muscle. That is how it works. Above 40 and the strain that the extra protein places on the kidneys is too much for the older body. Protein is the food group that places the most strain on kidneys. With young and healthy kidneys, not such a big issue, they can handle it. But as we grow older, the kidney function decline rather drastically when we pass 50. And the strain that extra protein places on kidneys when you're older than 50, which is already functioning less optimal, is not a wise idea, and it's going to shorten the life of your kidneys. Furthermore, above 40% protein intake and you start increasing the risk for colon and other intestinal cancers with the excess meat and protein consumption. Why 35% from carbs? Now above 40% and you'll have too much energy in the body available. When you don't use it, it's going to accumulate in fats. Below 30% and you run the risk of having too little energy for your body to use, which will result in the body struggling to build muscle. Why 30% from fat? Minimum 25, maximum 35. First, why fat at all? Why do we need to take in fat? Because guys, it plays a critical role with your endocrine system. That's basically your hormonal system, aka your testosterone and other hormones. Now, when you start using above 35% fats, this is not for a guy that's older than 50, then you obviously increase the risk of adding fat to your frame because of the increased energy intake. But much more dangerous than that is potential damage to your kidneys due to the high fat intake. Look at the science studies that's on the screen. Below 25%, and that is when you risk that your endocrine system won't function optimally, meaning you won't have enough testosterone, growth hormone, and all these other hormones that your body needs for healthy functioning. Okay, now that we've determined the optimal macro to follow a healthy diet that adds muscle to his frame and help him to lose fat, let's look at the diet choices out there, the popular diet choices out there, and see which of them makes the grade for the older guy. Remember now, the key here is older guy, since the older body deals less well with certain diets. And in fact, some of these diets out there can be downright dangerous for the older body. All the diets that I'm going to discuss here, they've got a large following out there, and it's been proven beyond doubt that each of them has the ability to produce results. But are they healthy? And are they the right approach for the older guy? Let's find out. Right, first up, keto and Banting. Now there are some differences between keto and Banting, but this is mostly the same diet approach, so I'm grouping them together. Typical macro for keto and Banting: protein is 10 to 35%, carbs is 5 to 10%, and fat 65 to 90%. Does it make the grade on protein intake? Yes, it does. Does it provide enough energy for the body? Yes, it does. Both these diets have a big enough protein content, and energy is mainly provided by fat instead of carbs. So at first glance, it can produce wanted results, and it's got quite a huge following out there. Are there any negatives to these diets? Now this is where the problem comes in. Multiple science studies, recent science study has been done, and it showed that there's a clear link between a drastic increase in cancer risk and high fat intake. Just look at the science study. Now the conclusion here is, for keto and Banting, the younger body can probably deal with these risks. But for the older body, this is not a friendly diet and can be downright dangerous. It provides enough protein and energy, but the accompanying dangers simply outweighs any benefits for the older guy. Now guys, if you've got an issue with what I'm saying here, don't attack me. I'm just conveying the science to you. Go directly to the people that has done the science studies and question them about issues that you might have. I'm simply conveying scientific facts. Okay, next up, the Paleo diet. Interesting one. The original diet before time began. Typical macro: protein 30%, carbs 30%, and 40% from fat. Does it make the grade on protein intake? Maybe. Does it make the grade on energy provided? Maybe, probably yes. This diet can neither fit in a cutting or a mass building plan. It fits somewhere in the middle, which is not the best option for those that are trying to maximize muscle mass and fat reduction. But the Paleo diet can be a very healthy option for the older guy. Protein intake is just a tad too low to build muscles, and the fat intake just a tad too high, but definitely one of the better choices, especially for the older guy. Conclusion: not a complete no, but also not a yes. If your aim is a fit and muscled physique past the age of 50, it might be difficult to obtain it on the Paleo diet. Right, next up, the Carnivore diet. Now this diet has got similar macros than keto and Banting. Typical macro is protein 15 to 20%, carbs 0 to 10%, and fat 70 to 80%. Meat, and more meat. Generally, bodybuilders will probably love this diet because it's just meat. Well, mostly just meat. But let's look at it. Does it make the grade on protein intake? No, it doesn't. Does it make the grade on energy provided? Yes, it does. Any negatives? No, surprisingly, this diet is not that high in protein, although you eat just meat. But the meat you eat are rich in fat. So the protein that you're getting is actually too little for you to grow muscle effectively. And furthermore, this diet gives us the exact same and even more cancer risk environment that keto and Banting gives. I refer you back to the science studies. And because of the huge fat intake, also increase risk for kidney damage. Conclusion: it sounds good, the carnivore diet, but for a bodybuilder, no. Protein intake way too low and the fat intake way too high. Next up, the Mediterranean diet. The typical macros of the Mediterranean diet is protein 15%, carbs 50%, and fat 35%. Now, for the non-muscle seeker, that is a perfect and rather healthy combination. But for the muscle seeker, sorry, not so much. This 15% protein macro is simply not enough protein for your body to grow muscle. So it might tick nearly all the boxes, but not the muscle box. A fairly recent study has actually shown that the Mediterranean diet is the diet that most people find long-term success with. And that's also something to keep in mind. Don't worry guys, I'm going to put up all these scientific study links in the video description box. So just check for it there. Now, does the Mediterranean diet make the grade for protein intake? No, it doesn't. Does it make the grade for energy provided? Yes, it does. Any negatives? Not really, except for the fact that you're going to struggle to build muscles. The protein is too low. And the fat content may be a tad too high. Conclusion: a healthy choice, but not sufficient to build muscle. The perfect fit for this diet would be an increase in the protein intake and a decrease in the fat intake. Okay, vegan and vegetarian. How can people punish themselves like this? Okay, but the truth is, vegan and vegetarian, that is healthy options. We can't get away from that fact. Complicated option for a guy that wants to add muscle though. And every single person that came across my path in life that was a vegan or a vegetarian struggled to add muscle to their frame while on these diets. And eventually they abandoned this diet structure completely. Their instincts for meat overcame their urge to be healthy. Now, this does not mean, guys, that it's not possible to add muscle when you're vegetarian or vegan. It's more difficult. But now, remember that vegan and vegetarian, this is not a diet as such. This is just a structure that you follow. It just specifies that you do not eat certain animal products and byproducts. You still need to define your macros and stick to it. So although it might not be the wisest choice for a bodybuilder or muscle seeker, with enough effort, you can still get the right macros in and grow. But now I can already hear the intermittent fasting crowd starting to scream, what about us? Well, intermittent fasting, like vegan and vegetarian, is not a diet. It's just a structure that you apply to your diet. So should you wish to apply to your diet, go ahead. I personally do not apply intermittent fasting myself, simply because my diet is effective enough. And I do not want intermittent fasting to slow down my metabolism. If the windows is short enough that you fast, then usually it's fine. But the longer the windows is that you apply to intermittent fasting, the greater the risk that you're gonna slow down your resting metabolism, especially for the older guy. And I don't want that. So it's something you can try as long as your fasting window is not too long. Okay guys, now we get to the point, what diet do I follow? Remember, it's a choice each person has to make for himself. But with the knowledge that I've got, let's say this is now nearly 20 years in the fitness and the nutrition field, it's a combination of the Paleo and Mediterranean diet, but with increased protein intake and less fat intake. And that coupled with a more frequent meal system. The target macros I use is, as stated in the beginning, those that's best suited for the older bodies. Okay guys, now this is the first video of a 3-part series video. This one was just to determine the actual macros that you need to apply as an older guy. The next video, part 2, is going to be about a day in a diet with the right macros and go through the whole day, all the meals. The last video, part 3, is going to be about the scientific system that you can apply to your diet to force results. It doesn't help you to have the diet in place, but it can't produce wanted results. And now I'm going to show you to use science to force the results. Now there are many roads, people, that leads to Rome. And I do not proclaim to have the perfect solution. But I've got a simple solution, and an educated solution that's based and rooted in science. There might be other approaches out there that works as effectively and maybe even more. But in the end, each of us carry the responsibility and the consequences of the choices that we made in life. Following the right diet is a very important decision that's going to affect your health and your future. Lastly guys, all this information and knowledge is already compiled for you and waiting when you sign up to the customized Advanced System 2 for the older body. And that is a system that I've developed over the past 20 years for the older guy. And that's a system I follow myself.